Hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live with me, Garth Sharif. I'm glad you could be here. On today's episode, Do AI Chatbots Dream of Electric Sheep? For those that are science fiction fans, you will know that it's a play on Philip K. Dick's novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? For which Blade Runner, one of the great science fiction films of all time, and Blade Runner 2049, Denis Villeneuve's sequel to Blade Runner, also fantastic. And if you're again feeling inundated with generative AI, ChatGPT, Google's Bard, what Bing's doing, um, uh, that would be understandable. I think I on any newsletter I get, and also any newsletter that I'm sending, it's usually around something to do with generative AI. And I had an episode a few weeks ago around FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's interesting how that has changed. And I'm evolving with generative AI, as many people are and professionals are. As I said before, for those that have listened and maybe participated in any of my courses, I've been involved or interested in machine learning, deep learning, AI for 5 years, 6 years, working and delivering programs on what this means for the profession and how we can adapt to it. And in small ways, we were all of us, and me maybe just a little bit earlier, getting used to the possibility that there was this change coming in the way we would interact with AI, and that was happening sort of in the background with the ways in which we, let's say, get a Netflix recommendation and with social media and advertising. And when ChatGPT really, in its early days, popped up on my radar, I thought, well, here's the next step. It didn't feel like a just a leap from where we were with artificial intelligence. It felt like just the next step. But one of the things that I'm becoming to realize now, it is in terms of technology leaping, in terms of where generative AI is now, and what it looked like a couple years ago. There is a huge difference, but it's not, it's not an exponential leap. It's the growth of the technology, the information it has available. Obviously, there's innovation involved, but one of the things that I can say, or at least I can feel, is that more than fear of missing out, the way in which it's permeating the lives of us, in both personal and professional, and the interesting part of it is the way it's sort of entering the creative process, and that's the part that's really interesting to me. I think, regardless of your profession, like accountants sometimes don't get enough credit for being critical thinkers and creative. Sometimes when we hear creative accountants, we worry about what they're doing. But in all seriousness, creativity and critical thinking and innovation and that spontaneity, that idea generation is part of professionals, artists, and that's what makes us human in some ways. That ability to just come up with an idea and have it original and unique and build around it. That's how we get art, film, theater, how we have breakthroughs in technology and breakthroughs in our career is through creativity. But where the conversation space is, and we'll get into the topic of this, do AI chatbots dream of electric sheep, is where this is fitting in our creative process. And again, how much reliance do we want to use these AI chatbots? But it is entering the space of maybe potentially taking away something that we do to initiate ideas, which is very, very, I think, new. It's a new feeling to me, in terms of tools that we have. Um, I think transformative technology that we've seen in our lifetimes, and everyone's lifetime might be a little different depending on when you were born. It always felt like it was changing the way the information flow in terms of how we interacted with the information flow, but not necessarily how we interpreted or where we started with that information flow. And this feels really different. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, like when we talk about ways in which ChatGPT and Google's Bard and other generative AI is being used, I think there's a sense of we can give it pieces and then still, make the human part of it. And that's what this topic is, that we still have to retain some control and some some quality control around this because there's issues still with chatbots. But the challenge, and I'm going to talk about this more next week in another episode, maybe 2 weeks, depending if I'm free next week. You'll see it on LinkedIn. Is sort of the existential. Where does an idea begin? So a lot of how ChatGPT is being used is to create structure and sort of blueprinting around things. Like help me start an article. Give me the construct of it. Give me the architecture. Give me something to work with. Help me set up some stages for my business development. Help me set up the outline of a marketing plan, right? And that makes sense. It's like a big the hardest part of creativity, and that's why we call it writer's block, is coming up with something like really like the starting point. And generative AI can really help with that. It really can. It can really like just say, I have writer's block. I have inability to like figure out how to get started. Here, let me ask you this question, ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gives us a running start. And and that's where it gets complicated for me because then where is it that we are involved? And it's not that it's not in a good way. Like for example, if you were to have a report that you had due, and it's about a let's say an accounting issue. I'm an accountant, and it's a research topic on a particular new standard and how it integrates with a type of industry. You could like if you had writer's block, how do I start this? Where do I begin? You could give ChatGPT or Google's Bard some very specific instructions, give it the audience type, and other information to maybe help you get started in the way to structure that, right? And it probably either will be a potential miss, but it might give you the start, the little spark to say, okay, that's great. This is I'm not going to use this in its entirety because, as we'll talk about soon, do androids do AI chatbots dream of electric sheep? That's really do AI chatbots hallucinate? The answer is yes. We're going to talk about that shortly. Um, but it's interesting. Like that's a different way to use technology. It's to like spark ideas, to give us sort of that start. And a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity, and sometimes the enjoyment of our jobs comes from that breaking through. And do we have to do it as much? And does that change, who we are as professionals? Um, I'm having a bit of an existential crisis with, I think, with generative AI. It's moved past FOMO to this is really shifting the way in which we do work, which we create. And so we'll come back to that. There's another topic I'd like to talk about that with in another LinkedIn Live. But let's get into the topic of today, which is do do androids dream of electric sheep? Do AI chatbots dream of electric sheep? And this is Philip K. Dick's title to his novel, which was eventually made into an amazing film with Ridley Scott and Harrison Ford. And what's the genesis of this um, article? You might this LinkedIn Live. You might have heard of when AI chatbots hallucinate. So this is an article from the New York Times. Karen Wise and Kate Metz wrote this really great article, and I will share that article on LinkedIn. And the crux of the article is, and there's been a lot written about this, not just this article, is that you're getting a lot of good things when you potentially ask uh, ChatGPT or Google's Bard a particular question. And the question is, how much do we want to just take it wholesale? And it's the subtle ways in which AI chatbots may just mix in a little bit of fabrication or what they call hallucinations into something that's fairly factual. So this was a question that was posed to ChatGPT by the New York Times. When did the New York Times first report on artificial intelligence? Okay, that's the question that these writers posed, and all of the generative AI. Oh, and I'm not sharing my screen. Let me just. I'm sharing the wrong one. Let me show you the actual article so you can see what I'm talking about here. And this is the article that I'll post when AI chatbots hallucinate. So they asked the question, when did the New York Times first report on artificial intelligence? And all of the generative AI, you know, cited a conference, right? And the conference in 1956 was real, but the article titled "Machines Will Be Capable of Learning, Solving Problems Scientists Predict" was not. The article was not in the New York Times. ChatGPT simply made it up, and also Google's Bard, Google's uh, generative AI chatbot, also quoted this article that did not exist. And there's other questions that have been asked of ChatGPT, and it's not like it's outright like falsehood. It's kind of like buried inside something that is not correct, right? So there was a conference, but there wasn't this article. There's another question about how James Joyce and Vladimir Lenin first met. Did they ever meet? We don't know, but inside this ChatGPT response is a fairly compelling answer, right? In terms of that meeting almost feeling like it's been documented and ChatGPT is just drawing this up. And so this is referred to as hallucination, right? Chatbot hallucinating, in the sense that it's not purposefully telling misinformation or lies. It's gathering information, and somewhere along its decision tree matrix, it's bringing in information that it thinks it's relevant, but doesn't know if it's true or not, but feels like it answers your question. And because ChatGPT is delivering such deep, velvety answers to questions, these little hallucination segments, sometimes they're like, for example, the Lenin James Joyce ChatGPT question, where we don't necessarily have evidence that they met, and ChatGPT is giving a response about where they met and in what year. That could be outright false. But the question about the New York Times article, first mentioning artificial intelligence, that's a little bit more nuanced because it's referring to a conference, but the article that it has made up doesn't exist, but the conference does. So it's like, ooh. And as a professional, as an accountant, lawyers, engineers, and myself as an accountant, what does this mean? And again, I'm not setting off alarm bells for using generative AI, because this is just going to get this generative AI is a game changer, not in terms of technology bump up, but in terms of the way in which we're going to actually use it, if we're not using it already, to help us with work and potentially change the way in which we work. But this hallucination is real. And so, part of this is when you do use ChatGPT professionally or Google's Bard professionally, it is actually not so easy to scrutinize that information because it comes back really crisp. And I have asked ChatGPT different learning questions for what I do, just to see where to withdraw in terms of uh, articles and blog posts, and it is very, very good. And it's hard to scrutinize where there could be something in there that is a hallucination. Right? It is not like a search engine like Google or Bing before generative AI, where you type something in and it's bringing up websites or things that you can look at and go, no, that's not right at all. It's really, it's not clear because the writing is so good. And this is a sort of challenge for generative AI to get better and not hallucinating. And again, the hallucination is, it's AI chatbots were built to be persuasive, built to gather and provide information in a nice way for us to use. But truthfulness or veracity is not part of its programming. Veracity is a quality of big data, and and chatbots are not scrutinizing the big data to say, is this something that we can? Where's the source for this big data, and can we actually use it in our AI generative response? And will it get better at this? I don't know. Like, that's not AI is in generative AI is not in the veracity business. It's not in the this is fact business. Obviously, it's going to try to get information from the best quality sources possible. And I don't think this is an issue that will derail generative AI. So I'm not saying don't use generative AI. Don't just ignore it. It's a fad. Absolutely not. This is a game changing development in AI. So we have to use this. This is going to be part of our professional lives. We have to be open minded to this. That's a conversation from at least next week or 2 weeks from now when I talk about how we learn and how we might need to consider how we learn with this development and technology. But for those that are professionals working in the space, accounting engineers, any information that you might have to use and then redeploy in a presentation, in a report, in a conversation, you want to be careful here because it is really, really subtle in the way in which you might, in a 2 paragraph response from Google's Bard, looks great. Maybe you just throw it in a presentation. It's better than you wrote. In fact, for example, Grammarly is also doing a great job of writing in your voice. Like Grammarly, which is a software that can help you with grammar and spelling, is almost all software companies, if they can start to deploy an AI chatbot, they are to start to take some of the heavy lifting. For example, Grammarly can write a persuasive email better than I can. The question is now, does Grammarly's AI chatbot hallucinate? Maybe not, but it might add a piece in there that kind of takes me away from what I'm trying to do. Or in the case of AI chatbots like Bard and ChatGPT, there might be a piece that is not right. And if somebody calls you out on that, if it's a client, if it's a boss, and you look into it and go, that one little piece was wrong, that's embarrassing and potentially a professional problem. And if you think about the article here from the New York Times, what does it matter? That you might say, when did the New York Times first report on artificial intelligence? You got the year right, got the conference, and it kind of made up this article that wasn't part of the New York Times. What's the big deal? The year, the context, all of that's right. Well, it's we're sort of in a place where we are passing along this information. We pass along information that we don't necessarily know is true to other people, and that gets passed along, and that gets passed along, and that's a societal effect of doing that. But then the professional effect is that, do you want to be associated with information that is incorrect or not valid? So again, what I would say is use ChatGPT in whatever way makes your job easier. I think a lot of it is just like to get yourself running uh, with a particular idea. That's a great way to use ChatGPT. But just scrutinize information that seems factual in there. That seems like this is a point of fact. And also think about the stakes of how you're using generative AI. Is this for a client presentation? Is this for evaluation report? You know, um, it is easy to slip into a place where ChatGPT can be used for a lot of things. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use ChatGPT to its fullest extent, or Google's Bard, or there's just more and more chatbots out there. But this article and others around hallucination is this is a problem that's not going to go away. And I think fundamentally at the core of AI, it's not to provide veracity of response, is to provide persuasive information that meets your needs at the time that you're asking for it. But for it to scrutinize and say, is this right or wrong? That's not what AI is going to do. And maybe it gets better at this. I don't think it'll ever be perfect with that. So just be careful, I think. And I'll send that article across so you can take a look and read it. And so, yeah, do AI chatbots dream of electric sheep? It's a question of what are these chatbots doing when they sometimes respond in ways that add these little pieces of sort of figments of its imagination, and we don't know exactly. That's one of the things with these chatbots, is at some point it becomes out of the developer's hands and it kind of goes through its own. And again, it's not sentient AI, but it's going through its own thinking process in a way. And sometimes it decides to just throw in this little piece in here that you might like, but it's not true. So you do want to think about this, about reliability versus relevance. That's something that we talk about in the accounting profession. All right. I think we are here today at the end of Do AI Chatbots Dream of Electric Sheep? I'll post that New York Times article. Ultimately, a lot of my LinkedIn lives are moving towards maybe more ChatGPT, Google Bard, generative AI, chatbot discussions. And I've been debating about this myself just thinking about this, like, with LinkedIn Live, there's a lot of choices in terms of topics because I do talk on a number of topics around professional development. But yeah, as I sigh, you should never have radio silence when you live stream or podcast. But as I sigh, ruminate, uh, yeah, my my exploration of this is I think the most interesting to me right now. I mean, I think about what is happening with generative AI, and I think about myself as a learning professional. I mean, what I do is I create content out of existing content, maybe those that have researched a particular concept like psychological safety or communication concept or conflict resolution model. A lot of great research out there, researchers, and I try to bring it in my own way to my professional cohort, CPAs or others. And this is how we learn. Hopefully, you learn from others, you learn from me, you learn from other sources, of course. But that's what I'm in. I'm in the learning business, and just like all other businesses that are looking at ChatGPT, they're saying, how can I use this? It's not about FOMO for me right now. I moved away from that. For it's into how is this going to fundamentally change what I do, and not in a threat way. Potentially, it turns out to be that way in a way. I'm like, you know what? I think people might be able to learn better from ChatGPT than from me. Like, ask it a question about what this is, and it can provide you an article, a video, a video curated for you with an avatar who describes in your learning style what a particular concept is. So it creates a learning video. I mean, I can see this happening, right? And then you might say, well, Garth has his style. I like his style, but what if this particular learning content is created for me with a question, with a avatar or audio only? If you're like how we learn is VARK, visual, auditory, reading, kinesthetic. Is it a possibility? Yes, it is. So in some ways that sounds like a threat, but it's also like just being cognizant of the world that we live in, and the way in which we monetize our services, and what we do well, or in terms of, for me, it's professional speaking and content development, and understanding that underneath this there's something happening foundationally, and it's either sort of how do I adapt, how do I learn, how do I use, right? I'm trying to avoid the threat part of this, but it is becoming a technology underneath everything that we do that we might need to engage more, at least myself, in terms of conversation about looking ahead, because the future is coming quicker for some of the things that we thought. For example, what I just said about a learning avatar that could be created in your learning style to teach you something, whatever it might be, how to program, how to work better with your boss, the things that I work in some ways, and do a pretty good job. It potentially is on the horizon. And where do, for example, myself, where how do I fit in that? Am I part of, you know, working as a supplement to that? Am I helping to provide information for these generative AI to learning, potential future learning chatbots to help learners? I don't know, but it's an interesting conversation, and we're gonna have more conversations. It's probably my LinkedIn live stream is going to become generative AI stream until it becomes just an avatar running the LinkedIn live. You'll never know maybe when that happens. All right. Well, thank you for watching today. I appreciate it. For those who are watching, I will put the New York Times article on LinkedIn. So you have that article. It's a great article. There's a lot of articles on AI hallucination, but I thought that one was great. And yeah, until the next time, Tuesdays, 9 a.m., trying to keep it consistent. It's heading into my busy season where I am still traveling and teaching, and also doing webinars as myself, not as a chat GBT or chat bot. So it might not be as consistent as every week for LinkedIn Live, but we'll try to make it happen. But I'd like to thank you for watching, and for those that are Toronto Maple Leaf fans, I feel sorry. I live in Toronto. They're down 3-0. Hopefully, they'll try to put a fight in maybe their last game. Hopefully not. Maybe we'll see. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Take care.